In this video, I'm going to share with you how to be 5 for 5 in your fight against MS. Don't turn away because all of that starts right now. Hey! Howdy! Thanks for learning about MS with me, Boster. I started this YouTube channel to help my own MS clinic patients learn between visits. And it's my hope that through these videos, I can help energize, empower, and educate people and families impacted by MS. Today, I want to tackle a really important conversation: self-advocacy and your role in trying to help you live your best life despite having MS. In this video, I'm going to lay out for you my 5 for 5 plan that I have cultivated with my patients over the last 17 years of being an MS doctor in practice. And I'm going to share with you a step-by-step fashion how you can implement it into your own life. So let's jump in. The very first step in our quest to be 5 for 5 is to write down some life goals. I would love it if you would pause the video for a second, go grab some paper and pencil and bring it back to the table. Take a few minutes and think through some life goals. I literally would like you to write them down on a piece of paper. This is actually very important, and it's something I'm going to ask you to hold on to. By way of example, I'll share some life goals that I've recently been working on. My first long-term life goal is to improve my own personal happiness. I, Aaron, want to cultivate happiness in my life, and I'm making that a long-term life goal. My second long-term life goal is to see the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis grow and blossom and help more families impacted by MS with our brand of MS care. My third long-term life goal will be to see my children grow and prosper and to help them become amazing adults. So those are the ones that I've written down. I would actually love to know what you wrote down. In fact, if you're willing, include them in the comments section below because I would love to read them, as I'm sure many other people on this channel would. Now that you've taken a moment to write down your long-term life goals, we have to talk about why. Why did I ask you to do that? Here's the reason why. In this video, I'm going to share with you how to beat up on MS. By being 5 for 5 in your fight against MS, we can help you live your very best life despite having this condition. That's the how. I can tell you that part. I can't tell you the why. I don't know why we're fighting. You have to tell me that. And I think a good place to center ourselves is surrounding those long-term life goals. When I go through this exercise in clinic with patients, I literally write down those life goals in their chart, and we review them sometimes. If you've written down that you want to climb Monte Picchu, for example, and a couple years from now, you are stubborn and refuse to do physical therapy, I'm going to ask you in front of your family how the hey you're going to climb a mountain if you're not doing physical therapy. So with that in mind, we can take those life goals and we can frame them as the why we're fighting. Now I want to turn our attention to the how. You've been kind enough to formally write down your life goals. We now have a reason for why we're fighting. The next step, I think, is to define MS goals, the goals of our MS care. What are we trying to pull off? Now, I treat towards the target of NEDA, no evidence of disease activity, NEDA. And that's a target that we shoot for. That means our target is no more attacks. That's our goal, is to not have any more MS attacks. Our target is to not have any new lesions or spots on your future MRIs. That's our target. The target is that there's no change on your neurological examination, and that the rates of brain volume loss, brain shrinkage, or atrophy is that of a normal, healthy population. Those are our treatment targets. That's called NEDA 4 because I listed 4 goals. If you were to ask me, hey, Dr. B, what's the likelihood that we can pull off that perfectly my whole life? I would say probably 0, at which point you might stand up and collect your jacket and go find a different doctor. But before you run away from this video, allow me to explain a little further. This is a treatment target. It's something that we have to be aligned so that we know if we're hitting it or not. It reminds me a lot of March Madness here in the United States. Everyone gets really jazzed about basketball in March. There's this giant tournament. So I imagine that at the beginning of every season of basketball, 64 different coaches from 64 different schools tell 64 different groups of young men, boys, it's our year, we're gonna win national championships. I just imagine coaches talk like that. I don't really know. And if you think about it, you might say, well, wait a second. 64 coaches all can't have winning teams, so 63 coaches are liars. Not really. What the coach is telling the team is that's their goal. He's setting the bar for national championships. What he's really saying is, gentlemen, we will conduct ourselves as champions. We will sleep and study, and we will train like champions. We will conduct ourselves as champions, and then we'll see what happens when we go play. Now, if they play their very first game of the season and they lose, I don't think they disband the team and fire the coach right away and close the college down. No. They look at what happened, they do a root cause analysis. Maybe they realize that that guy needs to pass the ball over to that guy more often, and this guy needs to stand over there. And then they go back out and play again. Now, this is a treatment target, if you will. It's a basketball target that they're shooting for. And that's exactly what I mean when I talk to you about NEDA, no evidence of disease activity. It's not that we're going to hit it every time. The reason it's so helpful is, number one, it's not highfalutin. If you have an attack, you know it, and that's not okay. If we see a new spot on your MRI, if we see that your brain volumes have shrunk too quickly, if we see that your exam is worsening, that's not okay. And so the reason in part that I like this definition, this target of NEDA, is it's not highfalutin, and everyone on the team, you, your family, me, we all know whether we're doing it or not. The second reason I like it is if we identify that one of those things are not okay, God forbid you have an attack, for example, that is actionable. In the same way that the basketball coach might change what happens with the team, we as a team are going to change what we do and how we approach your disease. So we've gone through life goals. I think it's fair to lay out our MS goals. And for me, I treat the target of NEDA. Now, I want to take this a step further and talk to you about how we operationalize it. How do we do this in clinical practice? Because talk's fantastic, but it's not going to help us live our best lives. So let's jump into that next. Now, when I talk about operationalizing our MS goals, I'm talking about the things that we do in clinic to help you live your best life. And I divide MS care at this point into 3 parallel paths. We do all 3 at the same time. The first one is addressing an MS attack. So an attack, a flare, an exacerbation, a relapse, it's all the same thing. It's when something bad happens to you neurologically and a day or 2 later it's sticking around and you have to come clean with your family that you can't feel your arm, God forbid, or can't see out of your eye, God forbid. An MS attack is caused because of inflammatory naughty autoreactive cells, which are in the bloodstream. They cross the blood-brain barrier into the central compartment where they see the brain and spinal cord and attack it, thinking they're attacking a bad guy, in short-circuiting a neurological function. Now, we don't know when attacks are going to occur, and we do things, which I'll get to later, to prevent them. But when an attack occurs, we need to be able to respond. And so step 1 is to identify, hey, something's weird going on, and it's been going on for longer than a day, and so I need to give Dr. B a holler. Now, notice that I just said longer than a day. This is the 24-hour rule, and it's a very, very helpful rule that my mentor taught me years and years ago. If you have a new neurological symptom that lasts less than 24 hours, it's less likely to be a new MS thing. Why? Because MS attacks are caused by inflammation. So imagine that you socked me in my jaw, right? And my face got all puffy. Well, tomorrow it's more puffy because the inflammation in my face doesn't go away in an hour. It goes away after several days. Similarly, when there's a new MS attack causing a short circuit in the brain or spinal cord, it's caused by inflammation, and those symptoms are going to last longer than 24 hours. So if you wake up in the morning and your hand's numb and you shake it out and it feels better, you probably don't have to call your MS neurologist. However, if you wake up in the morning and your hand's numb and the next day it's more numb, now I think you need to give us a holler. When we identify a new neurological symptom that we're concerned could be an MS attack, we need to figure out, is it actually an MS attack or is it a pseudo attack? Now, pseudo is Greek for similar to, but it ain't. And if you have multiple sclerosis and you get an infection, even something silly like a urinary tract infection that you're not even aware of, It raises your core body temperature, and you can literally short circuit old areas of damage. So if you have a reemergence of numbness of your leg that you had a long time ago, we need to ferret out, is that a new thing or is it a pseudo attack caused by an infection? How do we do that? We check your urine, we make sure that you don't have an infection somewhere, and if we identify an infection, we treat that infection. It's always very interesting when you treat a urinary tract infection and the numbness in the leg goes away. Now, if we're unable to find an infection, then we're probably going to conclude this is an MS attack, and we'll discuss options for treatment. There's lots of different flavors of high-dose steroids that can be given. There's different formulations orally that can be taken at home. There's IVs that can be administered at home or at an infusion center or in a clinic. And we can hasten the recovery of your MS attack and regain function by quelling that inflammation with high-dose steroids. Before we move away from the discussion of attack management, we have to identify that if you're taking a medicine to slow down your MS and prevent attacks, and then you have an attack, well, that's not okay. That's like saying if you're on birth control and you get pregnant, well, gosh, it didn't work. And so the last thing that we have to do after we assess recovery from the attack, I like to bring my patients back into clinic a month after I treat them to assess. We also have to have a heart-to-heart conversation about whether or not your disease-modifying therapy is doing a good job or not. And that might be an inflection point where we have to kick it to the curb and upgrade our treatment. So the first of 3 parallel paths to treat your MS is managing attacks. The second parallel path that we'll take in helping you live your best life despite having MS is focusing on managing chronic symptoms. So symptoms are things that stink. Oftentimes you can have an MS attack and not fully recover and pick up a symptom. For example, a numb hand or a burning leg or some other type of neurological thing that impairs the quality of your life. So if I slow your MS down and you're miserable, I didn't do a good job, and I don't want to do a bad job. To do a good job, we need to slow the MS down, which we'll get to in a second, but we also need to improve the quality of your life. And I find the easiest way to do that is to tackle symptoms that stink. So as I work with people in clinic, increasingly over visit by visit, we spend more and more time tackling chronic symptoms. I oftentimes will think about what I refer to as the up theres. So the up theres is energy, mood, thinking, and memory. These are invisible symptoms. They're very, very commonly impacted in the setting of MS. And so I talk about them with every patient, every visit. And if you're having difficulty with cog fog, if you're having fatigue, or if you're suffering from significant anxiety and depression, those things will erode the quality of your life. And so we want to tackle them head on. On this channel, I have a bunch of videos about management of these symptoms. And so I'll throw a playlist up above, either here or there. I guess it's here. And you can click it and check it out if you want. Another set of symptoms that I think must be addressed are the down theres. You know, the down theres, bowel, bladder, and bedroom. If you would like to improve the quality of someone's life, help them control their bowel and bladder and have meaningful interactions in the bedroom, and we're really, really doing well. My point here is, as things impair the quality of your life, I want you to bring them to your MS neurologist's attention and say, hey, I've got this thing going on. We can then game it out. I will probably present you with 15 different things we can do. I say, ooh, we could do this, 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 this. And then you'll say, no, no, you're a weirdo, never, maybe, yes. And we'll custom pick what we want to do to try to help improve the quality of your life. Let me give you a favorite example. Men, we like our erections. That's a fact. And some gentlemen with MS can develop erectile dysfunction. Now, if a gentleman with MS has erectile dysfunction and it bothers him, then I give him a little blue after dinner mint. I give him Viagra or Cialis or something to improve sex. If a gentleman with MS has erectile dysfunction and he doesn't care, then I don't care. Because in this example, treating erectile dysfunction does not slow down or speed up MS. It just makes Friday better. I ask him to bring me things that concern him, for example, erectile function, and then we'll game out how do we want to try to make that better. As we game out how to live your best life despite having MS, we have a path to manage attacks when they occur, and we have a path to manage chronic symptoms when they occur as well. There's a commonality that you as the human being, the you expert, know when things are going on, and I ask you to present them to me. Just bring them to our attention so that we can game out how to make them better. Real quick before we go on, Do me a solid favor. If you like this video, would you give it a thumbs up, please? Also, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. Those two actions teach the YouTube algorithm that you really like this content and help push it out so more people impacted by MS can benefit. Thank you. Now, the third parallel path is the most important, and this is disease modification, changing the natural history of MS. The word natural history is a doctor word, which means if I don't do anything to help you, what happens? And untreated MS, and for that matter, undertreated MS, is a nasty animal, and it's the leading cause of neurological disability amongst young people outside of trauma. And we want to do things to change that natural history, to not allow you to let MS just run its course. And this is where being 5 for 5 in your fight against MS really comes into play. So there are 5 things that I think we need to be doing all the time to alter this disease process. And I'm going to go through them with you right now. Number 1 is to not smoke stuff. You heard me right. We don't need to smoke stuff. Smoking carbon-based stuff, whether that be tobacco or cannabis, taking a carbon-based, lighting it on fire, and then the smoke billowing off, you suck that in. Sucking in smoke is super, super pro-inflammatory. It is pro-inflammatory to your lungs, but it's pro-inflammatory to your blood vessels. It's pro-inflammatory to your brain and spinal cord. And it is a great way to make MS worse. Turns out that if you smoke, it doubles the likelihood of developing MS, which is a very scary statistic. A scarier statistic is that if you have MS and you smoke, you can speed up the disease by nearly 50%, which is terrifying. Now, the good news is, if you don't smoke or if you quit smoking, you can slow that back down. And so one of the major things that I need us to do if we're gonna live our best life despite having MS, if we're gonna strive to be 5 for 5 in our fight, number 1 is to not smoke stuff. I include cannabis. Now, in Ohio, I am a medical marijuana recommender, and I find that medical cannabis can help lots and lots of symptoms associated with MS, but I don't want you to smoke cannabis. I want you to use an edible or a topical or a tincture or maybe a vape, but not analog blunts, cigarettes, joints, etc. Now, there's a larger discussion to be had about don't smoke stuff, because really smoking is a cardiovascular risk factor. And it turns out that any unchecked cardiovascular risk factor can make you get worse faster in the setting of neurological state and MS. Let me rephrase that so it's clear. If you have untreated cardiovascular risk factors, you will get worse faster in the setting of MS. This includes things like uncontrolled diabetes. This includes uncontrolled high blood pressure. So if you have MS and your blood pressure is running high, you're going to end up more disabled at the end of your life if you don't control that blood pressure. Similarly, if you have morbid obesity, there was a really disturbing paper that just came out that demonstrated that people impacted by MS that are overweight have a faster progression. We need to look at all of these cardiovascular risk factors, and we need to identify ones that we can work on and strive to do that so that you can live your best life despite having MS. Remember, don't smoke stuff. Number 2 in our quest to be 5 for 5 in your fight against MS is to exercise as part of your lifestyle. Now, I want to unpack that sentence. Doing something as part of your lifestyle means there's no reward for doing it. You don't get a gold star. And there's also no punishment if you don't do it, like you have to go in the naughty corner or time out or something. Doing something as part of your lifestyle means it's integrated into what you do, and it's just part of your everyday life. I'll give you an example. I have a lifestyle of showering in the morning. I like to shower before I go to work so that I don't stink in front of my patients and my team members. It's part of my lifestyle. I don't send out a tweet, hey, I just took a shower. I don't send out a Facebook post, be like, my shower was awesome. I just shower. And if for whatever reason I wasn't able to shower one morning, no harm, no foul. I don't go to work all downtrodden that I wasn't able to shower. I would just shower that night or maybe the next day. So be it. Showering is just something that's part of my lifestyle. I need exercise to be part of your lifestyle. I need you to identify a form of exercise that you don't hate. Here's why. People impacted by MS that exercise as part of their lifestyle end up less disabled at the end of their life. Quite literally, the data is really solid. Exercise slows brain volume loss, something that we really have to address in the setting of MS. Exercise markedly improves depression and anxiety, something that many, many humans have. At the setting of MS, you're twice as likely to experience depression or anxiety. So that's an awesome option for treatment. People impacted by MS who exercise have less spasticity, they have better balance, and they fall less often. Think about this thought exercise. If we cloned you, all right, so there's two of you. One of the two clones, we're gonna give chocolate cake and Days of Our Lives TV. So you're gonna sit, eat cake, watch TV. And the other clone, we're gonna give an elliptical and carrots. And we're gonna get back together, say, in 4 years. And we have an out of shape version of you who's a little overweight, has a weak core, balance is not very good, but they know a lot about cake and they know a lot about TV. And then we have a version of you that is prehabilitated, in shape, lost extra pounds, strong core, strong legs. And in this scenario with the two clones of you, there's an attack of left leg weakness, an MS attack where the left leg gets weak. This deconditioned version of you is seated in a wheelchair, not able to stand back up. This prehabilitated version of you is limping and aggressively doing physical therapy to get back in the game. Now, I'm not going to insult you and say, which one do you want to be? It's a rhetorical question. But it's intended to make the point that exercising as part of your lifestyle is a key element to living your best life despite having MS. Now, it's not easy to exercise. It's sure hard for me to work a full day and then go home and do anything but sit. And yet I understand how important it is. And so I got to make myself do it. And you do too. The secret, I think, is to find an activity that you don't hate. And we have to use a modern adult mentality, not the high school mentality. If you hearken back to the glory days of high school, if you could run 1 mile, well, then you could run 2. And if your friend could run 2, then you could run 4. But if you skipped a day, well, then you just forgot the whole thing. It's kind of an all or none. And that's not very realistic in the modern adult era. When you have family and kids and work and hobbies and a bunch of other things going on, you can't just spend hours and hours exercising. So how do we fit it in? Well, let me give you some examples of some stellar forms of exercise that I have found work very, very well for adults with multiple sclerosis. If you are ambulatory, walking is an awesome tool. Going for a walk after dinner, going for a walk on your lunch break, going for a walk Sunday morning. You can squeeze in a little bit of walking. There's all kinds of pedometers and Fitbits that'll track your steps. If that helps you, grand. But if you can embrace walking as a form of exercise, then we're on to something. Now, if you tell me, well, Aaron, I walk at work, good job, but that's not what I'm talking about. I want you to dedicate at least one moment during the weekend, 30 minutes, to walk or do some form of exercise. I want you to dedicate 1 to 2 days during the work week, Monday through Friday, when you could commit to 30 minutes of walking or exercise. This is really what I'm looking for, presenteeism. Now, walking isn't for everyone, and some people aren't able to. The water is darn magical in the setting of multiple sclerosis. In the water, you weigh less. And so someone who might not be able to easily move around on land, they can do so in the water. You throw a life jacket on, you're buoyant. You can walk laps that way in the pool. You can do water Zumba. You can do water aerobics. You could swim. The water's fantastic. If you get overheated, the water wicks away the heat. If you're having a bad day of balance and you fall this way, the water pushes you back that way. There's a lot of things that are fantastic about water therapy in the setting of MS. And so if you're looking for a form of exercise that you might not hate, consider doing something in the pool. Other fantastic exercises include yoga. Yoga is superb. And Pilates is also fantastic. One of my personal favorites, and one that I find to be very, very effective in the setting of MS, is weightlifting. Now, to frame this, as you're trying to pick out your different exercises or what you might not hate doing, we want to keep 4 things in mind that are key for exercise. Number 1, balance. Balance is very, very important in MS. And so ask yourself, is the activity I'm doing going to help me with balance? If it's yoga, the answer is yes. If it's a recumbent bike, the answer is no. The second thing is cardiovascular endurance, all right, the ticker. And this can be accomplished through lots of different ways. A rowing machine, walking, cycling, stationary bike. Yoga and Pilates are not going to help cardiovascular endurance. The third thing is limb flexibility. Flexibility and stretching is a super important aspect to exercise in the setting of MS. And certain exercises, I'll use yoga again as an example, are really, really good at that, others not so much. The last thing is core strengthening. I'm not talking about big biceps. I'm talking about strong abs and a strong back, strong butt, strong legs and hips. These are going to be very, very helpful. So I'm not looking for one exercise that covers all of those. I just want you to be aware as you're gaming out your exercises, think about which of these 4 things you're focusing on that day. Exercising as part of your lifestyle is a key element to MS. I recognize that it can be hard, and I'll throw one more idea out for you if you're struggling trying to figure out how to get started. Ask for help from a neurophysical therapist. Meeting with a neurophysical therapist can be fantastic. These guys and gals are ninjas at figuring out gait mechanics and what's working and what's not working, and they can literally help you construct a wellness plan. They'll put you through the paces of physical therapy, and when you graduate, they'll send you home with a home wellness program. It's an awesome way to kickstart exercise in the setting of MS. Number 3, as we strive to be 5 for 5 in your fight against MS, is to eat smart. What you eat matters. And unfortunately, a lot of American physicians don't spend enough time or energy educating related to nutrition. In MS, it makes a really, really big difference. There's a lot of videos on this channel about nutrition and MS, so I'll throw a card up here and you can certainly check that out, but I wanted to discuss it with you now. I'm gonna go through at least 5 things that I want you to be thinking about as it relates to diet and nutrition. The first is that we need to up your water game. Most Americans run around super dehydrated, and in the setting of MS, that can wreak havoc. It can make multiple symptoms worse, including symptoms of bowel and bladder, including spasticity, even including cog fog. Being dehydrated is bad news bears, and if you don't believe me, I double dog dare you to up your water game and see what happens. We need gals to be drinking about 100 ounces of water a day, and gentlemen to be drinking about 120. I recommend that you accomplish this by inserting a 20-ounce glass of water with breakfast, a 20-ounce glass of water with lunch, and a 20-ounce glass of water with dinner. It's not that bad. Then I need you to drink 1 glass of water between breakfast and lunch, and 1 glass of water between lunch and dinner. That's going to be all 100 ounces. And you finished by the dinner hour. This is really important. Most of us don't drink enough during the course of the day, and when we get home and we're really, really thirsty, and we start pounding water, maybe even bringing water to the bedside table. The problem with that is that we make urine for 6 hours after we drink something. And so if you're drinking late into the evening, you're guaranteed to wake up multiple times and have to go to the bathroom. If you drink 2/3 of all the water you're gonna drink in the first half of your day, and you stop around dinner hour, you're not gonna be actively making as much urine when you go to bed. You're also not gonna be dehydrated in the evenings and feel like you need to drink water. Upping your water game is really key, and it's the very first thing I want folks with MS to think about as they're starting to improve their nutrition. The second thing is to focus on vitamin D3. Turns out that low levels of vitamin D increase the risk to develop MS. And if you have MS, low levels of vitamin D drive the disease faster. Supplementing vitamin D, I like to use D3 because I think it's better absorbed in the human body, is a really important step related to nutrition and MS. Now, I practice in sunny Columbus, Ohio, where it's not that sunny, and in fact, about 5 months out of the year, we really don't see the sun very much at all. And oftentimes, when I'm checking vitamin D 25OH levels, that's the blood test that I order, I can see vitamin D levels that are in the gutter. They're literally like single digits, like 9. Now, we need that level above 50, but below 100. That's the window that we want to get you in. And oftentimes, we supplement vitamin D by taking D3. 5,000 international units is a pretty standard dose that I'll give my patients. Although sometimes we need to use more intense doses, like 50,000 weekly, and then we follow the levels to push them up and keep them up in that range. Something that I think is really awesome is you can get D3 through the sun for free. If you go out in a halter top or shirtless for 15 minutes in full sun, you'll absorb 5,000 international units of D3. And so if you can be in a private location where you're not going to freeze to death, you might consider doing that once a day just to get your D3 that fashion. We've got the water game, we've got D3, what's next? The next step in nutrition is quite hard, and that is to avoid processed foods, sugar-laden foods, fried foods, fast foods, diet foods, soda pop, and foods with ingredients that you can't pronounce. Now, that is a big thing to change if you're not used to eating in a healthy fashion. And it literally changes how and where you shop. You'll need to shop at the perimeter of the grocery store. That's where real food is found. The stuff in the center of the grocery store, that's highly processed, packaged, and it'll last forever on the shelf. Guys, food should not preserve. Food should rot. And if you can move towards avoiding processed foods, if you can shy away from fast foods and sugar-laden foods, you're going to find many things about your MS get easier. Not only will you have a better body composition and lose a lot of weight, but you'll have massive more energy. You'll think more clearly. You'll have less depression. If you don't think this is true, I dare you to try it for a month, and you will be absolutely shocked at the change when you shy away from those things. Fast food is not real food. And if you can't understand the ingredients, well, that's not food, those are chemicals, and I don't want you to eat that. Up your water game, supplement your vitamin D, and avoid processed foods and foods with ingredients that you can't pronounce. The next thing I want you to think about is what I call your macronutrients, making sure in specific that you're getting enough protein. Protein, in my opinion, is the most important macronutrient. I want you to eat your protein first at each meal, and we're shooting for 1 gram of protein for every kilogram of body weight. So that means 1 gram of protein for every 2.5 pounds that you weigh. And you can divide that up over the course of your day, your different meals. I need about 70 grams of protein a day, and I eat 2 meals a day, and so I need to make sure I'm getting about 35 grams of protein in each of those meals, and I choose to get that up front. There's lots of different fantastic forms of protein. If you're a vegetarian, there's a host of fantastic proteins that are available that are vegetarian. If you're a meat eater, then there's plenty of lean, fantastic meats that you can eat. And the goal here is that we want to get 1 gram per kilo. Getting in protein is important. It's the building blocks for everything in your body, and it's satiating. It's going to fill you up, and it's going to make it much easier to achieve diet goals and body composition goals. It's also going to make you feel better. The next thing that I want you to pay attention to is fiber. Now, unfortunately, most American diets are nearly devoid of fiber. Fast food has like no fiber in it because fiber takes longer to cook, and so they've extracted it. We need to have fiber in our diets. It's really important for our gut health. It's really important as a tool for body composition, and it's missing, so we need to add it back in. I want you to get 25 grams of fiber if you're a gal, and about 35 grams of fiber if you're a guy each day. And there's lots of different natural ways of getting fiber. Fruits and vegetables like plums, pears, apples, prunes are fantastic for fiber. Berries have a lot of fiber. Avocado has a lot of fiber. Green vegetables are packed full of fiber. And if it's hard for you to get an adequate amount of fiber through your diet, you can supplement with a fiber supplement, just like you can supplement protein with a good protein supplement. But I want to make sure that we're getting those in. My last comment about nutrition before we move on to the next topic is carbohydrates. I want you to avoid simple carbohydrates. I want you to avoid sugars. I really feel that sugar is nearly a poison, and we should probably try to cut it out of our diet as much as possible. Complex carbohydrates, I'm okay with, and I want you to eat them last. Eat your protein first, eat your healthy fats second, and put those carbs dead last. There's a lot more that we could talk about as it relates to nutrition, and I have links to videos that you can look at. There's an entire discussion on supplements and whatnot, but we'll save that for another video. Jumping back into being 5 for 5. Number 4, in being 5 for 5 in your fight against MS, is the daily practice of mindfulness. So what exactly is mindfulness? Mindfulness is defined as being in the present moment without prejudice. Being in the present moment without telling yourself a movie in your mind about what might happen in the future. Being in the present moment and not worrying about something that happened in the past that you're stuck thinking about. It's really being present in the now. And that may sound kind of cheesy or corny. It's not. We lack that in Western culture. There's very few activities that we do where we're truly in the present moment and mindful. On the contrary, we are congratulated when we multitask. So if you can drive and eat a cheeseburger and talk on the cell phone all at the same time, well, good job, Johnny. You did a super job in multitasking. And that's actually really super unhealthy, not just because you're driving and talking. Mindfulness is something that we need to cultivate, and I'm going to give you several different examples. If you are having sex and thinking about something besides sex, that is not mindful, right? Because you're not in the present moment. I want you to look for activities during the course of your day where you can spend just 5 minutes and be in the now. I'm going to give you some examples. Many of you that follow the channel know that I've been doing something that I call shower meditation. Remember how I said I have a lifestyle of showering every morning? Well, when I finish cleaning my body, I sit Indian style in the shower, I close my eyes under the water, and I let myself have whatever thoughts I have. Thoughts come and thoughts go, and I just kind of dismiss them and just keep breathing. And within a few minutes now, I find myself in this nice, awesome zone where I'm just really paying attention to my breathing. And I can really listen to the different sounds of the water. I can feel the water on my body. I can smell the smells in the shower. And I can be present. And I have found that doing that every morning is life-changing. I stand up from my shower meditation and I am ready to tackle whatever the day throws at me. I'll be honest that when I started to do it, I wasn't very good at it. And I really struggled to think about just being in the now. I spent a lot of time worrying about what was going to happen in clinic, and I had to train myself to put that away. So that's one way that I practice mindfulness. You could practice mindful meals. That's where you put the TV off, you put the phone away, you turn the radio off, and if you're fortunate enough to be sitting with friends and family or village members, take a moment to reflect on how awesome it is that you get to be with them right now. Take a moment to reflect about what you get to eat. Be thankful for what you get to eat. Take a moment and literally smell it. Taste it. Spend 5 minutes in the now with a mindful meal. There's a lot of other ways that you can be mindful. Listening to music, if that's the only activity, can be mindful. Yoga can be mindful. Meditation, as I mentioned, can be mindful. Going on a walk outside in the woods, if you put the phone away and spend time in nature, is extremely mindful. And I challenge you, I double dog dare you to insert 5 minutes of mindfulness once a day, every single day. If you have found a form of mindfulness that you really like, do me a favor and leave it in the comments section below so that others who are reading can learn from your experiences. What do you find to be helpful as it relates to mindfulness? I'll look forward to reading your answer as well. Number 5, and being 5 for 5 in your fight against MS, is to take the most effective disease-modifying therapy that you're comfortable with and to make sure that it's working. Now let's unpack that sentence. Disease-modifying therapies are medicines that we can take to slow MS down, to prevent future attacks, to prevent new spots on the MRI, to prevent the accumulation of neurological disability, to slow brain volume loss. These are very, very important medicines. Now there's 27 different formulations that I can count as I make this video at the tail end of 2022. That's very, very exciting. But the medicines are not all equal. Some work better than others. Some, for example, can't slow brain volume loss where others can. They also have completely different side effect profiles. Now I have many videos on this channel about MS disease-modifying therapies, so I'll throw a link up here in case you wanted to check some of those out. And this video is not telling you that you should take drug A and not take drug B. I need you to have a conversation with your MS provider. And it's my goal to get you on the most effective drug that you are comfortable taking. And we accomplish that through a discussion. Once we get you on that drug, whatever that drug is, we then need to monitor to make sure that it's doing what we want. If you start a birth control pill and get pregnant, that didn't work. If you start an MS disease-modifying therapy and you're still having an attack, that's not okay. If you're on a disease-modifying therapy and there's other clinical elements of your life that are going south, like you're failing the litmus test of life, you're pulling away from activities, that's not okay. We need to talk about that, and that might necessitate us upgrading your disease-modifying therapy. Beyond overt clinical attacks and beyond failing the clinical litmus test of life, there's other ways that we check on your DMT. The MRI, for example. In my patients with MS that I'm treating with the DMT, I check an MRI of the brain at least once a year, and I check an MRI of the cervical spine about every other year or so. And I'm looking for new structural brain and spinal cord damage. I'm looking for new or enlarged spots or enhancing spots. And if I see those while you're on a disease-modifying therapy, that's not okay. That's breakthrough disease activity. And that would sensitize us that, hey, something's not right and this drug's not doing what we want it to do. Lastly, each time you come into the practice, we're going to run you through the MS Olympics, where we'll check the various neurological examination tests and the functional tests that we like to do. And if we see that you're sliding off that, if you're not doing as well, if the hand is more clumsy, the walk is slower, what have you, that's going to sensitize us that something ain't right. We don't marry our MS disease modifying therapy. We date it. And as long as that therapy is a gentleman and a scholar, then we're going to keep on keeping on. But if that therapy fails us, we're going to kick it to the curb and we're going to upgrade the therapy. In order to live your very best life despite having MS, I need you to be 5 for 5. And one of the very most important is taking the most effective DMT that you're comfortable with and making sure that it's working.